Hi there, Sam here, Reloved Guitars. This video is a relatively quick video covering the things that I would like you to check for before you consider sending a guitar down to me for setup. If you're bringing it in person and you live locally, then it's no problem, you can bring it and I can very quickly tell you if something stands out as not being feasible or economical to do. And there's not a lot of situations in which that occurs, but there are some important things to consider. So we'll cover them one by one. Electric guitar first, acoustic guitar second. Representing the electric guitar, basically I've just got this neck here which I'm saving for something or other, but it will demonstrate the point. So electric guitar, if you're planning to send one down to me, I want you to check two things. I want you to test the truss rod sensitivity or adjustability, whether it works or not. It's critical that it works. If it doesn't work, I would struggle to give you the kind of action you want. So first of all, we'll test the truss rod action, and the second thing is I want you to ascertain or take some photographs to help me ascertain the condition of the frets. That's critical because on the electric guitar setup I pretty much always end up doing fret leveling, and if the frets on your guitar are completely worn out to begin with, then it's kind of changes the game. You may well send it down to me, but it may be that there isn't enough metal to do fret leveling to get the action we want, and maybe the recommendation is either refret it, which is an additional expense, or it's not an economical repair. So two things for the electric guitar: truss rod function and fret condition. For the truss rod function, I want you to test it. There are two places where you'll maybe be able to adjust it. Most guitars adjust at the headstock end like this, and when you take the cover off, you'll see under there's an Allen key fitment of some sort to allow you to adjust it. What I recommend you do is you slack it right off counterclockwise. Now if you've got the strings on your guitar, what you may notice when you slack it right off, you'll feel the truss rod becoming slack. You may notice that the string loading pulls the neck into something of a curve, and you can tell by kind of looking down it. It gives you some indication. Then what I'd like you to do is to put your Allen key in and turn the thing with your strings on as well. Turn the thing until it starts to stiffen up, and you can see here it's already stiffened up now. And if I can get the damn thing in, I'm going to go quite a long way beyond that. That's a lot of turning, okay? But what I can see straight away is I can see this puts the guitar into a back bow. You may well not be able to see it very well from here. It's quite a difficult thing. It doesn't focus very well. But if I put as much back bow into it as possible, and maybe you can sort of look down the edge here, and you might be able to see that it's basically convex. It's sticking up in the middle. We don't want to leave it like that to play, obviously, but that's a good quick test. And if you can see it changes from either concave to convex when you tighten it, then you've proved that the truss rod is working, and that's what we need to know. If it doesn't make any difference at all, or you can't turn it at all even with a fair amount of force, then you need to let me know, because it may be that we can't make that adjustment. And if we can't make any adjustment on it, if the truss rod is non-functional, then we're kind of stuck with what we've got, the loading of the strings to curve the neck or not. And sometimes you end up having to put excessively heavy strings on to get the relief that you want out of it. It may not be ideal. So check that. That's the first check. In some guitars, the adjuster is down here. The same principle applies. Clockwise turns it, tightens it up, and causes it to bend into the convex shape. If you have to take the neck off, including let the strings dangle, or take the strings off, unbolt the 4 bolts. This is 3, it's a custom one, but undo the 4 neck bolts carefully. Take the neck off to check it. It's really important to do it for me. Check it if it's usually when it's an older guitar, but do the same test, and then don't bother reassembling the guitar. If I'm going to set it up for you, send it down in 2 parts and I'll put it back together again. So it's simple, but it's critical that you test that. The second thing I'd like you to do, and this is important with an electric guitar, because an electric guitar almost always needs fret leveling to get the playing action you want, I want you to get out your iPhone or similar, but if not, if possible, a high quality camera a high resolution camera, and I want you to take some slightly oblique shots, and I'll put these into the video if I can with clever editing. And what I want you to do is get enough high quality, no blurs please. I just want a sort of shots along the edge here. I'll give you a quick look view, that sort of oblique shot, right, so that I can see in detail the ends of the frets and I can see the surfaces of the frets. Probably at 3 different positions would be really helpful. Okay, now that helps me to ascertain whether there's enough life, and if you can send me this beforehand, the photographs of that, then I can say to you, in the very rare exception, I'll say to you, don't send it. Have a consider whether you want to source a different neck or you want to pay for a full refret if it's a highly sentimental value guitar. Okay, but I want you to have the choice, but you can help me with those pictures. So that's the 2 things for the electric guitar: truss rod function, fret condition. For the acoustic guitar, there are 4 things, and the acoustic guitar is good in one way because usually I can get considerable improvement for less money. So my setup is 60 quid for the acoustic, £100 for the electric because of the fret leveling involved, precision fret leveling. With the acoustic I can usually get a significant improvement out of the action without doing fret leveling, hence it's cheaper. But it depends on you checking, or us together checking, 4 things. So the first one is a truss rod adjustment test. I'm not going to actually physically do it on this because I've got it set the way I like, but on an acoustic guitar, again, you have an option. Mostly the adjuster is in here, just at the end of the bridge like this, sorry, the end of the neck like this, and that's ready to go. Same principle, crank it forward, check to see if it moves or turns it more or less convex, or when you slacken it off, does it go flat or concave. You want to see some movement in that. If you can't see it with your eye, you can do the check where you hold down the first string against the first and the last fret and see whether there's a gap between them, between the string and the fret, somewhere roughly in the middle. That tells me there's some curvature. If when you've tightened it up considerably, if it's going to go into a convex arched shape, what you'll notice is when you do that, there's no space at all. The string will already be resting against the fret because of the nature of that convex sort of hump or the arch. Okay. If you've tested that and you see that it does that, then slack it back off and before you send it to me. That's the first thing, truss rod condition. If you've got one of the old thing, I don't know, like an Echo or something, EKO, I think it had the truss rod adjuster at this end, I think. Same thing applies as to the electric guitar. Take that off and adjust it that end. Now another thing that's very important, second thing that's very important that I need you to take a picture of, is to check whether the guitar top is flat. Now the reason for this is that a new acoustic guitar tends to have a flat top usually, unless it's an arch top, different kind of thing. But if it's a typical acoustic, it will be designed with a flat top, and the bridge sits on that top, and the position of the bridge is then obviously in correct alignment with the way the neck's aligned to give you a nice action with a bit of adjustment room in the bridge. On many guitars, particularly down here in the southwest, anywhere where it's humid, if it's humid, the body of the guitar, the top, particularly if it's wood, absorbs water and expands, and because it's got nowhere to expand to widthwise, it expands upwards in a bulge called bellying, and that then lifts your bridge up like this, and you often can see the bulge. Even in really bad cases you can see the bulge. Now if that's the case, you tend to find the result is the action gets higher and higher over time. That's one aspect of it. Curing that really only can be done by long drawn out dehumidifying, and that's a matter of putting your guitar in a case with dehumidifiers and kind of checking over time that you reduce this, and then putting it away once you've played it. Many people like me are lazy and they leave them on pegs, and consequently they get some degree of bulging depending on the relative humidity. The other thing too is that over time string loading tends to push the, as well as pulling the bridge up, assisted by humidity, tends to push the neck heel, yeah, down into the body, resulting in the kind of misalignment of the geometry and of course a high action down here. And when that happens, the guitar often late in its life needs a reset, which is a very expensive and time consuming process, which I don't like to do. I don't do. It requires taking the neck off, which is can be quite destructive, and re-shimming and altering the angles of everything under here to get it perfect. But again, you really wouldn't bother doing it if you've got a bellying problem as well, because you're kind of setting something up in a less excuse me, less than an ideal circumstance. So importantly, what I'd like you to check, or give me an idea of before you send, so I can make a decision on it, is the flatness of your condition at the top of your guitar. And I don't know how well you can see this, but if you get a flat edge, like something like a spirit level or a long ruler, whichever you've got, even a short ruler will tell you. And can you see here, when I place it kind of with the fulcrum in the middle by the bridge, just behind the bridge, can you see that you get quite a lot of movement either side? Now that's telling me straight away that the bridge is, the belly is raised up, and I've got a belly bulge on this guitar. That's going to have affected the playing action. So what I'd like you to do is what I'm doing now, is to get your straight edge, kind of place it in the middle, hold it so it's sort of equidistant either side, i.e. not all down one side. I guess it doesn't really matter, but preferably if you can sort of balance it between the two extremes, and then take an oblique photograph like this. And again, I'll show you. I'll probably get away without inserting these pictures, because it's just easier to show you here what I'm looking for. A photograph like that, so I can see the rise or the gap at either ends, and it gives me an indication of how bellied or otherwise the top of the guitar is. If it's a smallish amount like this, that's probably going to be okay, but we'll add to that a photograph of at the same time, take a picture of where the neck joins the body, and that, I'll show you again the shot I'm talking about, like that. That helps me to see whether this is sunken in at all, and gives me an idea of the last fret action. All right, that's really important. It's not exact, but I can't measure it, but it can give it'll let me know if there's a deep sinking of the heel end of the neck, which is kind of important to know as well. And so that's the third thing. So first, truss rod function; second, the flatness; third, last fret action, and the condition of the neck heel where it meets the body; and finally, out of all of them, a picture of the saddle, because if your guitar has already been adjusted by somebody else and there's no further adjustment room, can I get out of this? Yeah, I could be struggling to reduce the action anymore, which is more than likely what you want. So an oblique shot of the saddle. If you don't feel confident or sure about what I'm asking for, get a few different shots. So let's go back to the one that's probably most useful to me, something like that. So I can see how much saddle sits above the bridge itself, and I can see the break angle of the strings and the condition overall of the saddle. So that's a really useful shot. Okay. If you want to, while you're at it, there's no harm in also, get back to the camera please, no harm in also doing a similar thing. If you want to, get me some pictures of the condition of the frets. Often on a acoustic guitar, I won't do any fret leveling at all, but you may be sending me a picture of the frets and pull the string to one side, and it may be that your guitar has very significant wear in the frets. So a sort of close-up picture of the fret condition, something like that, maybe with the strings pulled down by the nut ideally, with the strings pulled a bit to one side so I can see any notching or groove where grooves will be handy. Most of the time on an acoustic guitar I won't do any fret dressing to remove that, because it will increase the price. But however, if it's something where you have got notches and they're annoying you, sometimes if you've got a 0 fret here, that would be a typical case where you've got clicking and notching on the fret, which is very common. In which case you might say to me, I want that getting rid of, in which case that puts the price up to the same price as the electric guitar. But on its own, providing there are no wear grooves that get in the way of playing, then I'll be aiming to reduce the action and set the guitar up with a low and light action at both ends without the need for fret leveling. And the reason for that is that we never go quite as low as an electric guitar. My target action on an acoustic at the last fret will be about 2 to 2.5 millimeters lowest. On an electric it can be 1.5 or slightly lower. So at that sort of level, we're on electric, we always hit the kind of in residual uneven frets. On an acoustic, they're still there. These frets are still inherently slightly uneven, but at 2mm or 2.5, which you tend to be just above the height where they start to buzz and choke. Okay, so those are the things. I'll take a snapshot of my little chart here in case you forget anything. I think I did the acoustic in a slightly different order, but basically that's my things. Test for me, tell me whether it works or not. Pictures, send me pictures, never too many, as long as they're clear and sharp and in focus. That's a really important thing. Okay, hope that's helpful. See you again soon.